Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the special council meeting today. It is 5:30 by my watch. Will you please stand for acknowledgement of country, service acknowledgement. Chair. City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the traditional custom. Respect the Aboriginal.
City of Victor Harbor committed to diversity, equity, respect people of all ages, genders, sexuality, beliefs.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. Remember those who've lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice service to our country.
To God, we ask you to be changed to protect and prosper people who.
Please be seated. We do have one apology tonight, and that is Councillor Quinton. The first item, which is 4.1, is the adjourned report for the air conditioning project. We've had the tender documents out for the last 2 weeks, those who have wanted to have a look at them. And so the current motion before council was that council approve a $250,000 increase in the capital budget to support the Civic Centre heating, ventilation and air conditioning refurbishment project in line with the scope of option 1. That was moved by Councillor Schofield and seconded by Councillor Mann. Given that it's been some time that we have discussed this, I'll let anyone who wants to discuss it participate in the debate, and then I'll ask Councillor Schofield, who moved the motion before council, to have a right of reply. So is there any further discussion in relation to that motion? Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it was good to actually look at those documents. I only managed to get here today along with Councillor Burns and Councillor Camp. I'm not questioning the addition. I don't think that's the case. What I'm questioning is the procurement process. And after what I read today, I think it needs to be reviewed quite extensively. I've done a lot of work when it comes to procurement, especially working for companies that build for government agencies. And obviously I can't talk about the things I found in the report because that's all in confidence. But I think if it wasn't in confidence, I don't think if it would pass the pub test. And not to say that anything that isn't above board, but it just, to me, there was a lot of glaring holes in what I would think is an issue with how council, and I think this is a thing for all local government and probably all government sectors, and I can understand to a degree why we've come back for an increase of 50% on a project, but that's probably a matter for a workshop. I do understand that this is administration's purview, but I think with the expertise of some of the elected members, we might be able to make the system a little bit better so that we don't have these huge increases to the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Krember. I do know that the procurement policy and procedures have been through the council and have been endorsed by the council, but certainly if there's anything that you think in relation to that policy that could be improved, I'm sure administration would be happy to talk with you about that, because we do have a number of procurement experts on administration, and I'm on the board of the procurement board with the LGA, so happy to talk with you about that if you want to. If you've got a follow-up question,
yeah,
that's
just a follow-up question. Is the procurement process audited and checked? on a regular basis, and would elected members be able to see those reports if they're available?
I'll ask the CEO when was the last time the procurement policy came to council, because when it comes to council, the elected members all have an ability, well, we all go through it, as I'm sure you have gone through it previously, and vote for that policy to be endorsed. So when was the last time it came to the Chamber, Victoria?
So our external auditors and internal auditing do review our procurement policies. So we've done a deep dive in regards to procurement before. There's actually a report coming to the next Audit and Risk Committee in regards to another internal review where we do the high, mid and low range procurements, just randomly do some selections of reviews. But our external auditors also review as part of their auditing process to ensure that we are adhering to our policies and procedures as per endorsed by council.
Yeah, sorry, I'm probably be a little bit clearer. Not the policy per se, but actually reviews of some of the tenders that have gone.
That's exactly what I'm referring to. Our auditors will actually randomly pick out a procurement and audit the process that was followed.
Okay.
And our internal audit process, which comes to the Audit and Risk Committee, which you are now a member.
Yep.
There is a plan will come through and say the plan is to randomly audit these various recent procurements to ensure that they were in accordance with our policy and procedure. So whether they were minor, mid-range and high-range procurements, they will actually pull them out to ensure. That's what we get audited for. So we both external auditors to undertake that and internal of actual procurement, not the policy.
And so just one last thing, when you say random selection, are there any trigger points for what would be considered something that should possibly be reviewed as part of a tender process? Like, for example, this document here being 50% over budget, is that something that would trigger a review, or is it just a random pick them out?
It's random in terms of the auditors will come in and they will literally have a look through and just go, we want to look at this one, and this one. Sure. So just to ensure that it doesn't matter of the, whether it's a small amount or a large amount, they all could have deficiencies in the process and considered for review. So no, a price isn't always, because again, tenders aren't always, or procurement exercises aren't always based on price. It could be in terms of the actual level of service that we're actually seeking, not just price.
Great. So just a clarification, I'm not asking for a review on price. When there is just a discrepancy, a variance between an initial procurement offering and the final price, is there a trigger point where, if a procurement goes out, we say it's going to be $500,000, for example, in this case, and then it comes back that we're $250,000 under budget, so it's 50% of the original budget, is that something that would trigger a review of that particular procurement?
Not necessarily, because I think in this exercise, what originally the council had was a budget, an estimate, and following that being endorsed by the council, detailed designs were done and further work was done on the works that were required before it then went to tender. So what council does in terms of all of your asset management plans, you have budget figures, but many of those projects have not got detailed designs, and it's not until that exercise is undertaken do we really understand the true cost, and also going out to market. If we are over budget, we will again come back to the chamber. It's not uncommon. There's this uncommon. This is the exact practice that we say now, basically based on detailed design and going to the market. This is what the price is.
Okay. And just one last question, sorry. When we get all our budget documents and tenders, not so much tenders, but I think as part of our capital works bids, does it clearly identify them as being fully scoped or just a budget allocation?
It's actually identified as it's a budget allocation, or if the actual project has been, we've had a cost estimate, an independent cost estimate based on that particular time, then that's what we will bring to council, and you would budget accordingly with maybe a 10 or 20% variance. But again, until we go to market, we don't really know or understand the true cost of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just for those people that might be listening online, we did receive 5 competitive bids. All of them were over budget because of a number of factors. They were originally outdated estimates because the budget was set quite a few years ago. Incomplete design at the budgeting stage because the budget was prepared, as Victoria said, before the design was actually done, and equipment mobilisation costs. So by receiving the 5 competitive bids, all which were over budget, that really provides that information about the estimates. And we have come back to council, hence coming back to you now. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question, or two things. One, I appreciated being able to actually look at a real tender document and help align the policy. Having a policy is one thing, but looking at a proper tender document was very helpful. The only thing I couldn't find was the original, I think, budget estimate of 500,000. Was that the procurement team or a consultant, or didn't have all the other bits were explained? I just couldn't find the original where that came from.
Jodie, would you like to answer that one?
Thank you, through the mayor. I think you might recall this question was asked at the last meeting as well. It was based on unit rates for the area of this building from Rollinson
Okay, but
before the detailed design was done.
okay, but that would have been council staff
Yes.
did the estimate. Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, it was a good experience. I would recommend to any elected member to have a review of a tender process, because it gives you a better understanding of what the process is taken to through the policy, but also that because we're responsible for and accountable for the budget. And of course, there's a big, and this budget here has been blown out. Again, it gives you a better idea, and it was a good experience to sit there and go through it and understand a little bit clearer as to why, and hopefully there's lessons learnt that the key factors as to why it hasn't done that. Again, we just hope that those things don't happen again. Because I think if you're going to go out to look at outdated estimates, I think you would do a new estimate before you bring it to chamber. And I think there's some of the lessons learned, not just submit something which is 2 or 3 years old, because it would be at a not in the right price range. So I think it's a good experience. Anyone should in the future look at it and have a go at it. It's pretty interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Is there any further discussion? No. Councillor Schofield, did you want to close the debate?
The only thing I have to say is, provided this is in line with the policy that we have at the moment, then there's nothing wrong with it. If you need to change the policy, you change it, and anything that comes up with the change is something different.
Thank you. The debate's closed. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to 4.2, the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority second budget review. As you know, Simon Grenfell came and did a presentation and answered all the questions that you had. And the CM update also had a number of questions answered in that as well. Just to note that recommendation 2, you should have got an email this afternoon because the wrong recommendation was put in your agenda. The recommendation was actually put, that the recommendation for next council meeting was put in there. So the recommendation should read, as on the board, that council approve the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority Executive Officer or his delegate to apply for a variable loan of $2,200,000 with the Local Government Finance Authority for a maximum of a 7-year period, the completion of the 2024-25 capital program and reimbursement of the ACM CAD loans facility. And that was moved by and endorsed by both Alexandrina and Yankalilla Council. You moving that way, Councillor Henderson? Do I have a seconder for that? That's recommendation 1 and 2 on block. Is that, you happy with that, Councillor Henderson? On block? Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. I have a seconder for that. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Schiller? No, does anybody want to speak to it? Thank you, Councillor Burns.
Just for clarification, I understand the error in recommendation 2. So next council meeting, they'll be coming back asking for another 913,000 beyond what we're talking about tonight. Is that correct?
I haven't seen the
No.
agenda. Is that Victoria?
No, that is in preparation for the 25-26 budget. That's their 25-26 budget.
Okay.
So they're, as all subsidiaries, they've got to present their budgets to council. That's where it was actually
Okay.
crossed over in the system in terms of preparation for the April council meeting agenda and this special council meeting.
So I totally understand recommendation 2 and why they need it. However, I still have an issue with the second budget, mainly because whether it's a subsidiary or a council, if we set a budget and they exceed it by a little bit, I don't have an issue, but where they exceed it by a large amount, then I can't support that, whether it's a subsidiary or a council. But I do see the rationale and argument for the second point, given the asbestos situation they've got to deal with. So if it was separate, it would be helpful to vote on 2 separately.
Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question to the CEO. If this doesn't get up tonight, hypothetically, and of course Fleurieu requires the money, how else would they get that money? Would they, in the 25-26 financial year, increase our contribution by so much? Which will be more of a rate rise than, because we have to cover that money by rates if we don't get the loan.
Yeah, so obviously if the council doesn't support it, all constituent councillors need to support to any changes of the subsidiary, and that includes Kangaroo Island Council. So there's the 4 councils that are members of the subsidiary. And in terms of if it's not supported, then I would assume that the executive officer would need to come back to council or go back to their board to look at another alternative to address some of their financial challenges, because this is about their cash flow and their capacity to address the ACM matters that they are now coming to a close. It sits separate to the delivery of the services that we have delivered by Fleurieu in terms of our rubbish collection.
Right, thank you. Just a statement. I'm sort of very disappointed that an email came out at 4 o'clock this afternoon because I wasn't able to access that email, and I set my debate up on currently what I have in front of me, which has now been retracted. So again, we talked about the last agenda item about process. Again, here's process. I'm not quite sure how you go overcome this. The fact is that sending an email, it's not going to actually get to everybody. So again, I'm just wondering whether.
Yep, so I completely acknowledge that there was an error made. I didn't pick it up because it was actually supposed to be just purely exactly the same item that was presented to council at the March meeting. That was lost. Was representing. Everything else within the report was the same, and the only commentary was there was no other commentary. Hence, I didn't pick up on the change in the recommendation. It was an error made by the officer that compiled the report, and as soon as it was identified, it wasn't identified by anyone else. Obviously, we had conversation over the weekend about the agenda. It wasn't picked up then in terms of an error. Likewise, in terms of the quality of the attachments, for some reason, last meeting they were perfect. This meeting they weren't in the system when they were loaded up. So I apologise. It's not about process. It's just an anomaly, a human error. Wasn't picked up. And as soon as it was, we let members know.
Yes, I think process is about quality control. That's part of the process. So again, it's disappointing that it's happened. Again, lessons learned, as I say before. So thank you for that explanation.
And just to reiterate, it was actually the officer who printed this, who actually did it, developed it, rang up and said, "Oh, I've just realised that I have printed the wrong thing. It wasn't picked up by anyone else except for her." And I think that it was brave and very good of her to actually ring up and let us know that she had actually made a mistake. and she was extremely apologetic about that. And, you know, sometimes human error occurs, especially when people are very rushed and are doing a lot of work and having to come back and organise things quickly. So we're all clear on that recommendation. Anyone else? Councillor Karemba.
Thank you. Yes, I voted against this last time, as did the majority of the chamber. Hence, I'm trying to understand, and I'm sure the CEO would probably have a reason as to how this has come back to the chamber, because my understanding is once we vote against something, it's a 12-month period that we've got to wait. I think Councillor Byrne mentioned that. So maybe if I could have some clarification from the CEO as to how a motion can come back once we vote against it.
Councillor Krember, I understand that the CEO gave you that clarification last week and talked with you about that.
It didn't make sense. I'm asking
Yeah,
for
well,
clarification.
I don't.
And the
think you
question,
can-
sorry, Mayor, the question was to the CEO. I'm just asking the CEO.
All your questions are through the mayor to the CEO, and as the person who chairs this meeting, if I'm able to answer them, I will do so.
But I'm asking the
sorry.
CEO. I'm asking for an actual explanation as to how this motion can come through. I'm not asking about what was given last week. I'm just asking for a clear, because I didn't understand it last week. So I'm well within my rights to ask for something before I vote on it. Is that not process?
Councillor Krember, that is process.
Right,
And
thank you.
And I'm also letting you know that process is going through the mayor, and if the mayor can help you as chairing this meeting, I will help you. As I said to you, the CEO clarified and talked to you about the reasoning behind there. I know that you didn't agree with her reasoning. I'm more than happy to ask her to provide you with a much simpler explanation so that perhaps you can understand it better, and I'll do that.
Thank you. It's not about being
So-
simple. It's just about being clear. I'm not, it's not that I don't understand. She just didn't make any sense. Big
So
difference.
you did understand what she
I
said?
didn't understand what she said.
Yeah, and also there's no need for you to use that tone or to.
No tone. I just don't like to be called, derogatory. You're making out that I don't understand simple things. It's not the case. I'm just asking for clarification, as the people are probably that ask me in the community, as to how is it that a motion can come back for the chamber that we voted against. Pretty simple.
Yeah. Can you please answer Councillor Krember, and you may need to use language that he will understand.
In terms of the
Point
recommendation.
of order. English will suffice, Mayor. English will suffice.
I reject your point of order, and she is speaking English.
The recommendation we put to council was that council approves. Both recommendations start with that. The motion was lost, as in there wasn't the full support of the chamber, which means there was no decision actually made. So and I tried to explain before, so I'm putting forward a recommendation. The recommendation was put to the chamber, those who vote in favour and those who vote against. The recommendation as it's written, it was lost. So there was no decision. You didn't actually make a decision to do something. You made no decision. So in terms where you actually make a decision and you want to either amend or revoke that decision, yes, that needs to come back by way of a notice of motion from an elected member, or under section 21 of the Local Government Act, I as CEO can bring back a decision. But this is actually, you didn't make a decision.
Clarification. So voting to not approve is not a decision.
You didn't actually, it was lost. My recommendation that I put to you was lost.
Yes.
So there was no decision made. If the council, if you'd put in the word there that council does not support, right, either of those recommendations, that you changed it, which you can do as a mover of the motion of my recommendations to you, you could have said, I move that council does not approve our second budget review, and council does not approve the borrowing of money, and the chamber carries that. You've made an actual decision.
Right. Thank you.
Right. Any further discussion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. All those in favour, please stand. In favour, councillor Mann. Councillor Mackenzie, councillor Kemp, councillor Schiller, councillor Schofield and councillor Henderson. Against is councillor Burns and councillor Karemba. That decision is carried. We now go to item 4.3 and I'll do these recommendations one by one. The first recommendation is that council adopts the draft Farm Business Support Grant Program guidelines as provided in attachment 1. Councillor Schofield moving that way and councillor Henderson seconding that. Do you want to speak to that? No? Councillor Henderson? No? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Karemba?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question why there was no, why there hasn't been any modelling done on rate reduction as we asked for during that. I know Kelly Knight Stacey said it may be difficult, but it was asked that there be some rate modelling done for rate review to reduce the rates for the farmers, and it's not in here. I'm just wondering why.
Through the Mayor, if I may, we do refer to it within the report. We're about to do rate modelling for 25-26 for the whole of the city. It's difficult to do that in separation, and this was looking at immediate actions that we could do now. They're more around medium, which will affect the budget, so we can still do that, and rate modelling is coming back as part of the budget workshop next week. It's not saying we haven't done it, but it's not a decision you could look to make now as an immediate relief, because that's not going to affect them now. It's not until the 25-26 financial year that rates come out.
Okay, just a follow-up question. So if we wanted to give them a rate rebate now before the review, it would have to be a motion of the chamber, is that right?
So every single primary property owner, they've already received their rate notices for 24-25, many of them paid. They can actually still apply if they haven't paid the full 12 months rates. They could do the hardship policy, or which we've actually identified in here. But in terms of setting 25-26, you haven't set the rate yet because you haven't set your budget, and you can't do that yet.
Right. So what immediate help can we do other than, so you're saying we can't do anything with rates for farmers in this budget?
No.
No. Okay.
You've already set the rates. It's already, rate notices have gone out. They can apply for a hardship if they haven't paid their rates, that they're eligible to do that right now. We refer to that in this report. But in terms of setting your rate, you can't do that until you've adopted your budget and actually set your rate policy.
Okay, thank you.
So that's still to come. You
Thanks.
can look to do that.
Any further discussion in relation to recommendation 1? Councillor Schiller.
Just a query about the guidelines, particularly we're making sure we are only capturing people within the city of Victor Harbor for this particular grant. And although we haven't specified any sort of ways of proving that, just some things that could be taken into consideration includes having a PIC number within the city of Victor Harbor that's allocated to a property within city of Victor Harbor, proving by using a rates notice, also by using a lease agreement or adjustment agreement. That was a bit more difficult for us, say agribusiness, but obviously they would have maybe a lease within a shop or something. So I'm just wondering whether some of those sorts of criteria of examples of proof of doing business within the city of Victor Harbor may be added into the guidelines.
Mark, do you want to respond to that question?
Through the Mayor, we have actually included in the guidelines that primary producers must be have classified land within the city of Victor Harbor, so that is a criteria. The other element of the guidelines talks about a business that's registered within the city of Victor Harbor. His primary focus is providing direct services. So everyone's case will be different, and so we will be seeking either a declaration or some sort of evidence from the farmers that is the case. I guess we've tried to balance the guidelines and the subsequent application form with asking sufficient information that gets us the evidence we need without being too draconian with our process. So it's a very difficult balance. And I think what we'll be doing is we'll be asking leading questions. The other part of this is the we will provide the primary producers with two options in terms of a declaration. One, they can sign a stat dec co-signed by a JP or a letter from their accountant providing evidence that they do receive 50% of their income from their land.
And what about the specifics of hardship? Because that is a big part of this. It's trying to target those who truly need it.
Yeah, so the application form will actually ask that question in terms of evidence, what grounds they're facing hardship. And so they'll make a declaration to us that they are facing hardship for reasons which they'll include in their application form. So it might be, as it's listed, there might be excess power bills, there might be water costs, might be freight loader costs due to the dry conditions.
Councillor Henderson, you seconded this motion. Did you want to?
Just, it was a question. I'm just wondering whether postcode would cover the criteria of eligibility. Do we have just the 5211 postcode, or do we go into 5212 with our council area?
Through the mayor, would be asking for their ratepayer name, because we can then cross-reference with our system whether they're actually eligible. Postcodes, yeah, we have a range of ratepayers that actually don't live here, but their rateable address is somewhere else.
Any further discussion on recommendation 1? Councillor Schofield, did you want to close the debate? No. In that case, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The second recommendation is that council establish a farm business support grants panel consisting of 2 council employees and 2 council members. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, Councillor Schiller. Anyone want to have any discussion? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. So the next recommendation is to appoint 2 councillors. If we have more than 2, then we will go to a ballot, and I'll hand over to the CEO to carry out a secret ballot. So I'm interested in those people who might be interested. Councillor Schiller. Councillor Schofield. Councillor Burns. Is there anybody else who is interested? No? What I might do then, before I hand over to the CEO to conduct a secret ballot in relation to that, is ask each of you to let us know Victoria just said that the council could appoint all 3 if we want, but you've just approved the recommendation that council appoint 2. So what I'd do is I'd ask you all to just 2 minutes why you should be appointed, and then I'll hand it over to Victoria to do a secret ballot. Councillor Kemp.
Would it be easy if I made an amendment and changed the wording from 2 to 3? That way you won't need a ballot.
That's already been passed, that one. It's already been passed. It was the previous one. Thank you. Thank you, though. So, Councillor Schiller, shall I start with you? If you would like to let us know why you should be appointed.
Thank you. I've been born and bred on a farm from my very beginnings. At age 16, I purchased my first small property, and I ran sheep on that property in my own right. I've married a farmer, and during that time we've owned 4 separate properties over a couple of council areas. I have been involved in farming, both being employed on my own father's property. I have an interest in farming. I have an interest in different areas of farming, including livestock, cropping. So I've sort of had a blend of interests in in different sectors within the agricultural industry. I showed a great interest in this subject matter when it came up, and sought some practical solutions that I brought to council at the time. So bearing in mind that knowledge and that I'm living, eating and breathing farming, I feel like it's a fair opportunity for someone that is within the industry to represent this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Councillor Schofield.
My experience is 25 years as a dairy farmer and aquaculturist. I was chair of the Advisory Board of Agriculture and sat on that board for 9 years, and the first woman to actually chair that. And that went across all agricultural industries in South Australia. I was named in the top 100 of rural women in Australia in 2000. The South Australian Rural Women's Award. As I said, I ran my own business, and I've undertaken research in water allocation back in, I think from memory, it was about 2000 again, when we had similar droughts. I've sat on boards, so I understand where government actually comes from and what sort of things to look for in this sort of situation. I'm very passionate about our rural industries and the future of rural industries and sustainable food production in South Australia.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have the same agricultural experience or background, but I have been spending a lot of time over the last 2 years talking to farmers in Wapinga and Inman Valley, and given the drought situation and also the recent presentation, I'm really wanting to learn more about the impact and the drought and other challenges have, and to learn. And if it was just based on expertise, I would have been on a number of other committees, but other people were put on as a learning experience. And I think it's really good to have experienced people, but you also need people to learn, to broaden the experience of decisions that we make in the chamber. So I really saw this as an opportunity. It's unfortunate it didn't have 3 positions. So, and if it doesn't get voted, it doesn't get voted.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll hand over to the CEO to carry out the voting. Sorry, can I have someone to nominate the CEO as a returning officer for the voting? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Councillor Henderson seconding that. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Chelsea's going to provide you with a piece of paper. There's 2 positions, so if you can clearly write down your 2 preferred candidates, so 2 names only on your ballot paper. Thank you. And noting that those candidates are Councillor Schiller, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Burns. Both members with 7 votes, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Schofield are the 2 candidates.
Thank you. We now come to recommendation. Oh, we need to go. No, we don't. I don't need to move anything. You don't need to come out of meeting procedure. The councillor appoint Councillor Schiller and Councillor Schofield to the Farm Business Support Grants Panel commencing on Monday the 7th of April and concluding at the periodic elections in November 2026. Can I have someone to move that way? Councillor Mann, thank you very much. And seconding that, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? No. Does anyone want to speak to that? No. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Recommendation 4, that the council grants delegation to the Chief Executive Officer to approve the recommendations of the grants panel in accordance with the adopted guidelines and within the approved budget.
Mayor Jenkins, can I add an additional sentence on the start of that, please?
Yes, certainly.
That council adds an additional council member position to the Farm Business Support Grants Panel and appoint Councillor Stuart Burns to that position.
Yep, certainly. Are you happy with that, Councillor Burns? The recommendation reads that council appoint an additional council member to the Farm Business Support Grants Panel commencing Monday the 7th of April and concluding at the periodic elections in November, and appoint Councillor Burns to that position. Moved Councillor Mann. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Karemba. No, that's in addition to the delegation.
Yeah, you can combine them or keep them separate, whatever's easiest.
In conjunction, yeah. So that's the one.
Excuse me, Mayor. Will I have a conflict of interest if I vote on this?
No, you wouldn't have. There's no material, there's no money involved in it, and no benefit to you or anyone else. But if you think that you do, then you. That's number 4, Chelsea. So you've moved it into, put it into 2.
Either
Okay.
or.
Yep. Okay. So that's now number 4 is actually on the screen, number 1 and 2. So appointing the additional member being Councillor Burns, and then the second one that council delegates, grants delegation to the Chief Executive Officer. So doing those 2 on block. Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Karemba, you were going to second that. Are you happy to still second those on block? Yep. Do either of you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Recommendation 5, that council supports administration and working with community groups to develop and support community-led initiatives to support farmers in the region, inclusive of the granting of cash and in-kind support using the use of council land under the council's existing community grants program and within current budget and delegations. Councillor Henderson moving that way. And seconding that, please. Councillor Burns. Either of you want to speak to that? Not anyone want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Just, I should have asked a question in the previous recommendations, but just a question to the CEO through, because we're using the sports grants program, and there's a lot of individual people, school children who want to go and do some sports interstate or they need assistance. So how can council help those people, because there's no money now left for those types of grants to support young adults or young children to actually go to be involved in sports?
Those grants are still available. That's the community grants program. So this was a separate budget for sport, more significant sport grants. That's what the money has come over. So the community grants still exist, and that's where those school children usually apply for their $400 contribution. That comes through that line. That hasn't changed. And that's what we're saying with these other initiatives, community initiatives, they can still access that.
Any other questions, statements? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. And recommendation 6, that council approve the transfer of $80,000 from the Active Wellbeing Community Wellbeing Grants Program to a new dedicated project budget line for the Farm Business Support Program, and a further increase of $10,000 to the allocation of supported additional measures associated with dedicated staff assistance to farmers in seeking government grants and promotion of the program. Moving that way, please, Councillor Schofield, and seconding that, Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Schiller and then Councillor Karembo.
This is just a backtracking question. In there, the guidelines we had just a generic phone number there. I'm assuming you're going to put a specific phone number on that guidelines for people to get directly to the officer involved?
Through the Mayor, possibly not. People calling into the office will have the front counter staff made aware of the process. In addition to what's in here, we're intending to actually provide a series of scheduled meeting times. People can come in and complete their application. And I'll be having a discussion with our ag group in the coming weeks about how we reach people more actively. The intention is we'll hopefully, if all goes to plan, by the end of this week or early next, we'll be putting things in the mail to people that are self-explanatory, hopefully, that allow them to complete the information and get it back to us. But the primary number for the council office will get to the staff required.
Thank you, Councillor Karembo.
Thank you. Just a question regarding the $5,444 or $340 a day for staffing resources. So is that staff that are working currently and this is just going to be extra work like overtime, or how does that get allocated? I'm trying to.
Well, it's not overtime, but it's actually we're going to be deviating staff from additional resources or using and probably covering them via the casual pool. But we've got existing staff that can provide the support with the grants program.
Okay, so you use casuals to fill in for people that need to do the grants?
No, we would use existing staff who are already experienced in grant distribution.
Okay.
And if they have any roles that need to be filled, we can use our casual pool to back them up.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any further discussion on this? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's unanimous. Thank you. And that is the end of the special council meeting. And I would really like to thank all of you. I think the Farm Business Drought Support has really been a really big team effort, very much led by Councillor Schiller and Councillor Mann from the last meeting. But it's been a really good example of how when we're all able to work together, and we had the briefing, which gave us a whole lot more information. The staff were fantastic in terms of bringing on more people and experts that could provide us with guidance and information. And I think that briefing session was a really good example. And this outcome is a fabulous example about how when we work together, we can really achieve some great stuff for our community. So I'd like to really thank each and every one of you for the work that you've contributed towards this outcome today. I think